Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam.
Sanchintayet Bhagavata
Vadana Arvindam Yat Vispuran Makara Kundala Valgitena Vidyodita
Nasam Anukampita Diyeha
Hare Krishna. Gauranga. Prityanukampita
Sanchintayet Bhagavato Vadanarvindam Yad Vishpuram Makarakundala
Tena
Valgitena
Vidotita Malakapola Mudaranasam Prityanukampita Diyeha Grihita Murte Sanchintayet Bhagavato Vadanarvindam Vismuran Makarakundala Valgitena Varanasam. Vaishnavis, if you're online. Mrityanukampita Diyeha Grihita Murte Bhagavato Vadanarvindam Valgitena Mudaranasam. Britya for the devotees. Anukampita Diya, out of compassion. Iha, in this world. Grihita Murte, who presents different forms. Sanchintayet, one should meditate on. Bhagavata, of the personality of Godhead. Vadana, countenance. Aravindam, lotus-like. Yat, which. Vispuran, glittering. Makara, alligator-shaped. Kundala, of his earrings. Valgitena, by the oscillation. Vidyotita, illuminated. Amala, crystal clear. Kapolam, his cheeks. Udara, prominent. Nasam, his nose. Translation. The yogi should then meditate on the lotus-like countenance of the Lord, who presents his different forms in this world out of compassion for the anxious devotees. His nose is prominent, and his crystal clear cheeks are illuminated by the oscillation of his glittering alligator-shaped earrings. The Lord descends to the material world out of his deep compassion for his devotees. There are two reasons for the Lord's appearance or incarnation in the material world. Whenever there is a discrepancy in the discharge of religious principles and there is prominence of irreligion, the Lord descends for the protection of the devotees and the destruction of the non-devotees. When he appears, his main purpose is to give solace to his devotees. He does not have to come himself to destroy the demons, for he has many agents. Even the external agency, Maya, has sufficient strength to kill them. But when he comes to show compassion to his devotees, he kills the non-devotees as a matter of course. The Lord appears in the particular form loved by a particular type of devotee. There are millions of forms of the Lord, but they are one, absolute. As stated in Brahma Samhita, Advaitam Achutam Anadim Anantarupam. All the different forms of the Lord are one, but some devotees want to see him in the form of Radha and Krishna. Others prefer to see him as Sita and Ramachandra. Others would see him as Lakshmi Narayana. And others want to see him as four-handed Narayana, Vasudeva. The Lord has innumerable forms, and he appears in a particular form as preferred by a particular type of devotee. A yogi is advised to meditate upon the forms that are approved by the devotees. A yogi cannot imagine a form for meditation. Those so-called yogis who manufacture a circle or a target are engaged in nonsense. Actually, a yogi must meditate upon the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that has been experienced by the Lord's pure devotees. Yogi means advanced devotee. Yogis who are not actually pure devotees should follow in the footsteps of the devotees. It is especially mentioned here that the yogi should meditate upon the form which is thus approved. He cannot manufacture a form of the Lord. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurinmilitam Yena Tasmaya Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Budale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Kirtan Sukiti Karanta Mekama Shanta Musa Param Prabhada Bhakta Nitam Bhajare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So this is a very nice continuation of this very deep chapter. Some months ago, I noted this down as a special chapter when I was reading earlier, and it was always in the notes. And now we're giving class only. It's very interesting. So we've already heard a huge amount of the very detailed theology, the very detailed descriptions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not only have we heard descriptive accounts of the form, but we've also heard theological statements about what is the nature of that form and what are the implications of that form being absolute, not relative. So we heard the very beginning of the chapter, Kapila was describing about the system of yoga, because he's here teaching how to do dhyana on the super soul and what are the attributes, the name, form, qualities, pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this form of dhyana yoga. So he described the preliminary stages. It's very interesting that in mainstream yoga in the world, in the Western world, it's not seen as so important, the later stages. But ultimately the later stages are the point of yoga. We find that the process of bhakti is a little bit distinct, because the goal and the process and the goal is actually the same, especially in Bhagavata Marga. Every aspect of the 9 process of devotional service is also included in the goal with bhakti. But here in yoga, only to do pranayam, only to do asana, that is not enough. If you only do shravanam in bhakti, can you develop Krishna prema? What do you think, Prabhu? Only if you do only shravanam, right? If you only do pada sevanam, is it possible? So therefore we hear the acharyas for all 9 processes of bhakti, they give one specific example, historical example of a certain personality who they obtain perfection just by one item, right? But the dhyana yoga process is a little bit different, because you have preparation stage and then you have the goal stage. So that is interestingly described. If any of you have heard of Iyengar, has anyone heard of Iyengar? If you do yoga, you know. So there was one guru, he was actually from the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, yoga guru, and he was also a part of the management group of the Sri Rangam temple, and he was very senior leader in the Sri Vaishnava community, and he was called Krishnamacharya. Has anyone heard of him? What was his full name? Tiruvannamalai something, Krishnamacharya. So he was actually one of the leaders of teaching yoga in the West, this physical yoga. And then, he's called Tirumalai Krishnamacharya. So he lived in, he was born around Prabhupada's time actually. Just he's 6 years older than Prabhupada. So whenever you see his picture, you will see with the Sri Vaishnav Tilak, you'll see Brahmin thread, dhoti, everything. So he was the first one, and he had some students called Iyengar, called K.P. Patavis Joyce, I forget his, I think it's something, Krishna something. Patavis Joyce, he had different students, and then there was one lady, I forget her name. So the 3 of them, they became very influential to introduce this asana pranayama in the West. But actually he was a very strict, pure Sri Vaishnava, the original guy. So unfortunately, he had 3 main students, but the only real one who was still practicing more like a strict Sri Vaishnavism was Iyengar. And we have one devotee, he's called Advaita, or Edwin Bryan. So he's one of the only devotees in the whole Hare Krishna movement who has successfully made an academic book with a very direct philosophical conclusion, which was very mainstream in the West, like in terms of Western academics. So he translated Yoga Sutras. He went to Harvard actually. So he's also a very strict devotee, but at the same time in the West, generally we're supposed to be educational movement, but we're not very generally famous for being educators, right? It's like if you think about in the mainstream society, if they say Hare Krishna, who are some leading educators in the Hare Krishna movement, we don't hear much, right? But he's one of them. So anyway, he was not friends, but he's got to spend some time with Iyengar. And he asked him directly, he says that, so about his faith, and he says, I'm still practicing everything. So he writes in his Yoga Sutras, he also did one, it was called Light of, I think, Yoga Sutras, or Light on Yoga, something like that. He explains, it's an interesting point. I'm not sure if he gets it from previous commentators or it's his unique contribution, but it's philosophically kind of makes sense. So he explains that the he splits up the 8 ashtangas, the 8 limbs, into the first parts is like a Karma Yoga, the middle part is Jnana Yoga, and the last part is Bhakti Yoga. Because the last three parts, they're just dhyana, but different levels of dhyana. So the first one is dharana, which means you're aligning your mind. Once you've detached your mind from sense objects, pratyahara. Pratyahara is linked, he links it with Jnana Yoga, because traditional Jnana Yoga is a renunciant path, right? It's an ascetic path. So, just like in the Shankara Sampradaya, in order to become proper follower, they have to take sannyas. That's what they say. What is it? Danda matrena naro narayano bhavet, something like that. By taking the danda, you become one with Narayan, right? So this is many jnanis, this is their main emphasis, is detachment, and then becoming enlightened just by the study. So the last three stages, once you've detached, once you've prepared your body, control your senses, and then completely detached and withdrawn from sense objects, then you have dharana, dhyana and samadhi. So those are the same three things. The word samadhi just means sama and dhyana. Dhyana means to focus the mind. So those three stages are very important. But pratyahara is also there. So these 3 points are there. Karma yoga means you're engaging your physical, psychophysical nature in bhakti according to what works for you physically, right? Then jnana yoga means I'm completely ignoring that and I'm going deeper and detaching, and by study, then I can try to understand things. By studying a lot of Upanishad, Vedanta Sutra, etc. And then bhakti means that not only I engage my intelligence, I engage my physical, psychophysical nature, but beyond that I give my full heart and I directly hand it to Krishna. This is my heart. Whatever you want, I'm yours. So this is giving a more detailed description, because Yoga Sutra is a contemporary text also to this. So, but it's also giving just sutras, so it's very short. There's just, I believe it's 192 or 196 sutras. So you can fit it on a couple of pages. So it's very short. Just like the Gita is very short, right? 700 verses. But it's so thick because we need the commentary to understand. So this is like, you can say, an exposition on not only the Vedanta Sutra, because it's explained, Bhasayam Brahma Sutra Nam, that's Vyasadeva signs off this text as being the commentary on Vedanta Sutra, Brahma Sutra, but this also expands on everything. That's why Srimad Bhagavatam is complete. All of the important points, not only in Vedanta Sutra, everywhere, you can find in the Bhagavatam. It's explained that there is a Mahapurana, has 10 topics, very important topics, starting with, what is that verse? Creation, secondary creation? Sarga Visargastha, Jnanam Poshnam Mutya. So there is 10 different items which are given, but Srimad Bhagavatam is higher than just general Mahapurana. It's a topmost Purana, especially for us. Lord Chaitanya clearly states that it's the topmost Pramanam Amalam, and is very dear to the Vaishnavas. But on top of that, it also expounds, just like this chapter is giving a high level of understanding which you don't find in the Yoga Sutras. So that's why it's explained that simply by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, everything is there. Whatever you want to find is there. Vedanta Sutra is there, Bhagavad Gita is continuation is there, Upanishad's essence is there, everything is there. Because if you think about it, when this discussion at Naimisharanya was going on, they were all complete scholars in Upanishads, they were complete scholars in the Vedas, but still they wanted some more ras. They wanted some more depth, some more sweetness, they wanted more continuation. Just to be on the, what is called Brahmavadi platform was not sufficient. Shukdev Goswami, he wanted to go even deeper. So this text is very important. So especially in this chapter you find very clear, detailed information about the form of the Lord. So it's very, very important. So we'll look a little bit at the verse here. Where is it? Because this one is very sweet, because Prabhupada gives a very sweet translation. The yogi should then meditate on the lotus-like countenance of the Lord, who presents the different forms out of compassion for the living entities. So when you see here, what is the word used? It's used Bhritya. So Bhritya, it means menial servant. Because they could have said Bhakta. Or they could have said, there are so many words, but here specifically the word Britya is there for the very humble servant. And then it says, why does he come for the Britya? He comes because he has the mood of Anukampita Diya, of mercy, mercifulness. So there are different words given for mercy. Srila S.B. Keshav Maharaj, he explains, because this was one of our gurus, he makes interesting point that he says causeless mercy, it seems to be redundant phrase, right? Because it seems like mercy by definition is causeless. But actually, when you go deeper in Gaudiya Vaishnava theology, there is different types of mercy. So the English word causeless mercy, it is redundant, but it's not actually redundant because there are different types of mercy, and not all mercy are literally in that sense causeless, because actually there is different types. So for instance, kripa is the type of mercy that you pray for. So because mercy means I'm getting an extra favor of the Lord even though I'm unqualified. So if you beg for something, it doesn't necessarily mean you're qualified, you're still unqualified, but by begging then you attract the attention of the Lord. So we hear that word kripa a lot, but then there's another word which is especially Lord Chaitanya. He came as which avatar? Karuna avatar, right? So S.B. Keshav Maharaj explains that the karuna means even people don't ask, they don't even know to ask. They don't even know that they're fallen. They think I am so perfect, I am amazing, and I'm so powerful. Ishwaro hamma hambogi, siddho hamma lavansu. This is Krishna describes what is the demoniac personality, that I am the controller of everything. I am the enjoyer of everything. Ishwaro hamma hambogi, siddho ham. I am perfect, I am powerful and happy. So in the material world, especially in New York, people, they think like that, no? Many big CEOs, entrepreneurs. In New York, if you don't earn 6 figure, you're seen as not very important in the city. But even 6 figures is not enough, you have to be earning 7 figures. Then you're made it in New York, right? So they think I am powerful, I am a great enjoyer. So many things they're thinking. So how can they be saved? Because they're not going to ask for mercy. The devotee, we're very fallen, we feel very unqualified, but at least we're begging for mercy. So we know that Krishna will hear our prayers. But those who are so fallen, they don't even realize they're fallen. That's like, was I sharing with you? I think we were sharing with you. There is one devotee, he said, this is a joke. So we were in Mexico, he's called Ishopanisha Prabhu. So he came up to us with a very serious face. You remember this story? Yeah. So he came up with a very serious face. He said, all of you in this temple, he said, all of you can easily fall down. All of you can fall down. He said, but in this temple, there is only one person that cannot fall down. So then he said, do you know who it is? So then one devotee says, it's obviously Srila Prabhupada. He cannot fall. But actually they asked Prabhupada that. They said, Prabhupada said, he said, all of you can fall, but Prabhupada said, I cannot fall. And then later they asked him, they had a doubt. They said, how is it that's possible? Then they asked, how come you cannot fall? He said, because I'm always praying to Krishna that may I never fall down. So because he's always surrendered to Krishna, Krishna protects. But this devotee said, no, not Prabhupada. He said, there's only one devotee who cannot fall down in this temple. They said, must be the temple president, because temple president, Prabhupada says, is my representative. So temple president maybe cannot fall down. He said, no, he can also fall down. So everyone was very confused. So he says, the only one who cannot fall down, this answer is very heavy, everyone was shocked. He said, the only one who cannot fall down in this temple is me. And we were like, what the hell, man, that's crazy. He said, the reason is because you're all so high that there is such a huge scope to fall. So there is some potential because you're very high up. But he said, I am so low, even below the grass. So he said, where can I fall? So he said this. So the mood of the devotees, they have humility. And by that humility, they become protected by the Lord. Just like a humble, meek child, they're always under the protection of the father, right? Just like once Srila Prabhupada, where was it? On the train? Then the conductor came, he says, you have to pay a certain amount of money, certain amount of rupees. He says, can you give me the money for the fare? Otherwise you cannot be on this train. Was it on the train? This story, I can't remember. Anyway, this is example. So then Prabhupada was feeling worried that, oh no, I don't have money, I'm just a small boy, what can I do? But then he realized, no, my father is here, he will protect me. She says, no, he will pay. So in the same way, the humble and meek devotee, they're always protected by the Lord. They're always praying for mercy. But Lord Chaitanya, especially Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, they're especially compassionate. They have this special anukampa, because even those who don't realize they're so fallen and they're suffering in the material world, even they get His mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Just like when you do Harinam, although of course if you're actively practicing, there's a different level, but still by hearing you get still type of Sukriti called Agyata Sukriti, right? Even you don't know what is Krishna. And by that, Bhakti Unmukhi Sukriti, then you get a chance to hear again. And by that hearing, you get a chance to hear again. Until you decide to surrender. But once Krishna has entered, he doesn't leave. You're always stuck with him. But luckily, Krishna is the best person to be stuck with. So that is the nature of this Anukampa. So he comes in so many forms. And this is very important. What does it mean, Anukampa? So Anu, we know in its prefix means following, right? So Kampa is very interesting. Kampa, it means to shake or to tremble, right? So that is literally, etymologically, the same word as compassion. Like anybody speak Spanish here? You speak. So how do you say with in Spanish? Con, right? So compasión. So in Latin, it means to suffer with somebody. That's what the word compassion means. So what is that word in English? Empathize or sympathize? Empathy, right? It means you can feel how the other one is feeling. So that is the mood of Lord Chaitanya. He comes as a devotee to feel that mood of the devotee. So he has the most empathy, especially in this Karuna avatar of Lord Chaitanya, because he is directly feeling that mood of the devotee, and he is directly praying as if he was a devotee. Even though he is the Supreme Lord himself. But he comes. But there are unlimited forms. So obviously we understand Lord Chaitanya's form is the epitome, is the, what do you call it, the highest, the pinnacle of compassionate forms. Just like it's explained, Lord Ram came, which type of Purushottam he came? Maryada, right? And Krishna, which type of Purushottam he came? And Lord Chaitanya? Yeah, he came to he is the topmost form which represents the compassion of the Lord. Why? Because he's Krishna himself, but he's taken the mood of Srimati Radharani, right? So this is very important that this word is used, the Anukampa. So this is the point of why Krishna comes. Britya Anukampita Grihita Murte. So he comes in many, many forms. And one should meditate on these forms. And then it's a very interesting point. I heard does anybody know Ravindra Suruprabhu? So he lives actually in New York State now. He was in Philadelphia before. So he lives in, what's it called? Yeah, where Satsuru Maharaj lives. So he often mentions this point that Makara, you can't actually translate in English. It doesn't exist anymore, that animal. Sometimes Prabhupada translates as alligator shaped. Just like you hear what's the verse in Damodarashtakam? The shark shaped earrings? Can't remember. But anyways, in the song, sometimes it said shark shaped earrings. Sometimes here it said alligator shaped earrings, right? And then sometimes Makara is also translated as Cupid, because in the iconography of Cupid, he's associated with this Makara form. But according to this taxonomy of species, Vedic taxonomy, it's a mix between a terrestrial and what do you call amphibious? No, not amphibious, like aquatic. But it's not an amphibious form. It's literally half terrestrial, half aquatic. So it's like a half-half. Just like Narasimhadev is half man, half lion. So this Makara is like that. So because the alligator is both like fish and is also like a land animal, you can walk around on the land. So Prabhupada sometimes translate as that. But literally it's like an animal which you cannot find easily now. So that is the description, even the earrings. And it's very interesting here. It's described Krishna's skin, especially his cheeks, are called crystal clear cheeks. Because that is a sign of beauty, to have very crystal clear skin, very pure, very shiny, very effulgent skin. So sometimes in this world, you see somebody with very clean skin, it's very attractive, right? Very clear. Why? Because it's a sign of health, it's a sign of strength, it's a sign of power, internal health and power. So in the same way, the Lord, His cheeks, they're so attractive, just by only seeing the cheeks, you become intoxicated. Only the cheeks. And we heard many other descriptions in the previous text. Just only His club, you become completely in bliss. The club which is smashing the demons. And then you also hear, just by looking only at His garland and the bees around the garland. So one by one, the meditation is there on all of these aspects of the Lord. So one of our devotees, they asked a nice question a couple of days ago, that okay, but it seems like this is 400 Narayana form, but we are not trying to, our specific Ishtadevata is we're trying to meditate on Radha and Krishna, not so much Lakshmi Narayana, or not so much Vasudeva form. So here Prabhupada clarifies that point. Prabhu is here now? No, I think he left. So he was asking this in breakfast, you remember? So he said, is it a distraction that if we're meditating on 400 Narayana? So we also discussed, based on Prabhupada's teaching, that because the Lord is absolute, the whole point here is that everything, including His personal effects, the different aspects of His form, they're all absolute. So therefore, for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we're actually meditating on Krishna as Super Soul, because actually they're non-different forms. So Prabhu mentioned the specific quote where Prabhupada clarifies that. So here Prabhupada is also mentioning, the Lord appears in the particular form loved by a particular devotee. So according to your bhava, according to your mood, according to your rasa with Krishna, then here the exact same Lord appears in the same way. It's not that there are different forms. The forms are one, but according to our mood and our devotion, Krishna manifests to us in a different way. So the Lord has innumerable forms, and He appears in a particular form preferred by a particular type of devotee. And there's a very important point, that all of these forms, they're given in the Shastra. They're not just something which can be created, right? So it's explained that in the Bible, for instance, you cannot have any image of the Lord, right? But Prabhupada explains that image means something created out of imagination, right? So that's why the words are very similar. So you imagine something. But authorized form is very different. So sometimes we see people, they try to attack this principle that how can you have iconography? So just like in the several hundred years of colonization in India, of Muslim rulers, they did something called iconoclasm. Do you know that word? Destruction of religious icons. Not only in India, actually, these colonial powers did it in many places. Just like Afghanistan was full of Buddhist temples and Vedic temples. But now you can't really find them, just some ruins are there. So they were going through this process of destroying these things. But what they don't understand is they're actually making a very basic philosophical, ontological error. Because if you don't think deeply, you only act out of sentiment, then you'll create nonsense, right? We gave a whole class about this downstairs, about how religion has to be philosophical, not just sentimental or fanatical. So this is a very interesting point which I was contemplating, that if you have 5 different things which you experience, because you have 5 primary senses, right? So there are 5 categories of structures of matter, right? So what we call it in Sanskrit, can you say, Prabhu? Bhumi, and then? Yeah, so this is given in the Gita, right? So Krishna is giving systematic explanation. He gives subtle and gross elements, but specifically we will discuss the physical ones. So earth, water, fire, air, ether, right? So you have different senses, knowledge acquiring senses, then you have working senses. So seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, hearing, those are things which we experience through our senses, right? 5 senses. So if you say that, to see the Lord is to have a material form, to see the Lord, that's offense. But actually the same thing is, for instance, sound, right? So sound is also material, although actually in deeper level, according to Vedas, sound is transcending. but objectively you can measure sound, right? So therefore sound is also something you can measure materially. So if sound is measurable materially, then they say, oh, you cannot see the Lord because when you make the Lord is material, but the sound is also material. So if a sound is material, you're saying that sound is okay, but form is not okay. But sound can also be material. So why is the sound transcendental? Because it's directly coming from God and it's representing God, right? So if the form is directly described by God, then how can you say it's material? So your sound is material, but you say it's spiritual because it's given by God. So then if you accept that any type of material thing can become spiritual when it's given by God, so if God gives form, why don't you accept? Because it's the same ontology of 5 material elements, right? So this is very important that we do not speculate. That's why, for instance, Srila Prabhupada was very strict that he wanted the paintings done by authorized pure devotee. Because even we see the paintings, but paintings can also be material, right? But when we see these paintings, they're transcendental. Why? Because they're directly authorized by the representative of God. So therefore, when you see any of the painting which is authorized by Prabhupada, that is non-different. That's why Prabhupada didn't like just some random Hindu paintings. Because there may be also errors in the form. So he was very strict. You can speak to Pushkar Prabhu, you can speak to Jadurani, now she's called Shamrani. So they were very, very rigorously trained and every detail was checked by Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes, just like this Nrsingadev painting here, I'm not sure who painted it, do you remember? So in that painting, Prabhupada kept saying, add more blood, more blood, more blood. They added blood, they said, it looks scary. They said, no, Prabhupada said, put more blood. So every detail, because Prabhupada is directly seeing the Lord. So if you have a painting sanctioned by a pure devotee, then that form also becomes authorized. So this is the point, that there are so many forms, but especially for us, we want to meditate on the form of Radha and Krishna, and also of Lord Chaitanya. Although we accept and meditate on all the forms, we particularly emphasize this. So although we can meditate on Narayan, we can meditate on Vamanadev, we can meditate on Matsya, but specifically our meditation is Radha and Krishna. And that's very important, that especially this verse, that is also emphasizing the compassionate side of the Lord. So that's linking us to Lord Chaitanya. So there are so many points, but we have 10 minutes, so I'll open up if there's any questions, comments, reflections. Yeah, you could wait for the mic. Yeah, maybe some button as well. Okay, I'll repeat it anyway. They have live, right? Okay, I'll repeat it. Mm. So can you repeat this, clarify the question again once more? Mm. So the question is that the super soul has specific personality, specific form, but at the same time it's said that we can meditate on many forms. But it seems like contradiction, because super soul has a form, so why we have to meditate on another one, right? So this whole chapter is describing literally the super soul from like text 23 onwards. No, even before. So it's describing all of the different parts one by one. So this particular is giving Narayana form, this particular chapter, because Kapila Muni is presenting that. And he mentions also Lakshmi earlier. So that is like the form. But at the same time, as Prabhupada explains in the purport, the Lord is absolute. So Advaitam, Achutam, Anadim, Anantarupam. So the first word is that Advaitam, they're all one. Advaitam, and then Achutam, they're all infallible forms. And then Anadi, they're beginningless. And Anantarupam, they're unlimited forms. So Brahma Samhita explains that all of the forms, they're absolute. So according to your, therefore Prabhupada says, according to your particular form loved by a particular devotee, the Lord will appear for you in that way. So this is the form of the Super Soul, but at the same time, all of the forms are absolute. For instance, for you, today you're wearing white, no? But soon we'll give you another color, right? No, I'm just joking. I don't know. I'm not from the ashram here. Just I'm giving an example, right? So those two forms, they're not absolute, they're relative. But Krishna's form is not like that. So that's why also he's explaining that even not only his form, but just like we hear that Krishna appears as Lord Chaitanya, how does he start? Krishna Vanam Tisha Krishnam Sango Pangarsha Parsa. So he comes with all of his associates, he comes also with his weapons and his personal effects, his personal possessions. And also he is describing earrings. So all of these things you have to meditate on because they're all part of Krishna's form. And Krishna's form is absolute. So although yes, there is a specific form of Super Soul given, which is Narayana form, with 4 hands, with the sharp-shaped earrings, with all of the Shankha, Chakra, Gada, Padma in his hands, that form is also non-different than Krishna's form. But according to your mood and according to your bhav, as Prabhupada says, the particular form loved by the devotee, then he appears in that way for you. So it's simultaneous, in other words. Just like Lord Chaitanya, he was listening to the Vishnu Sahasranam. You know this pastime? It's very nice. So in that pastime there is one name, this is Vishnu Sahasranam, but one name is given, Narasimha Rupa. Is it like that, Prabhu? Narasimha Rupa? I think exactly like that name. So after hearing that name, then he became absorbed in the ecstasy of the form of Lord Nrsimhadev, and he was running around the town in that very ferocious form. Because actually they're Advaitam, Achutam. So they're all Advaitam, all of the forms, they're all Krishna's absolute forms. So they're all non-different than each other. But at the same time, according to our mood, we connect with that particular form. Does that make sense?
It makes sense that Krishna is absolute.
Yeah.
But then if we meditate, like we'll experience something different if we meditate on Brahman
Yeah.
compared to Bhagavan.
But if...
Our experience is different, even though Krishna is absolute.
So according to your mood, it will come out. Just like Prabhupada, he sees Krishna's energy, but he sees Krishna inside of the energy. So even the Brahman devotee, when they see Krishna there. Just like when even the bombs, when was it? The Japanese were bombing Calcutta? Who was bombing? Japanese. So they were bombing Calcutta, and Prabhupada said, even the bombs, I saw them as Krishna. So he saw Krishna present everywhere. So even in the impersonal, the devotee, he sees the Shama Sundar, he is always conscious of Krishna. So although there is a distinction, but even the form, just like we say, Abhinat Nama Namino, so this chapter is explaining that there is no bhinna, there is no difference between the name and the named. So if you say Krishna is in his name, that's incorrect, because Krishna is his name. So in the same way, Krishna does not have a rupa, Krishna is his rupa. Does it make sense? So there is no duality. So it's literally non-different. So just like Srila Prabhupada, wherever he went, he saw Krishna present there. He went to the Bowery, he saw Krishna there. So, but we are trying to get to that level. So by doing the process of Bhakti Yoga, we will get to that level where we can see Krishna's presence everywhere. Does it make sense? Yeah. Yes, bro? Yeah. Yes, so Prabhu is asking that I mentioned earlier that the Iyengar, he wasn't Edwin Bryan. Edwin Bryan is friends with Iyengar. I think Iyengar passed away now, but he knew him. So I was just quoting him and he knew Iyengar. So Iyengar writes in his book, his commentary on Yoga Sutras, that I'm not sure because I read the whole of Edwin Bryan's book and he quotes all of the original commentators. Even there's one commentator called Vyas, but it's not clear if it's same Vyasadeva, I don't know. But there's different commentators on the Yoga Sutras. And it seems like it's his, I'm not sure, but it seems like it's kind of his unique point that he's mentioning, that the first few stages of Ashtanga is like linked to Karma Yoga, then middle to Gyan, and then last one to Bhakti. Especially his being a Sri Vaishnava. As a Sri Vaishnava, because that's a Vaishnava viewpoint. Some people, they meditate on more impersonal way, some yogis. So, your question is that there's some more detail. So one thing is you can read that book, but because I haven't read his book fully, actually Iyengar's book. I just read Advaita Prabhu's book. But basically you can think about it like this. The yamas, niyama, asana, pranayama is all dealing with the... Pranayama is also subtle body, but you're also breathing. But it's actually helping your subtle body. But yama, niyama, asana is all physical, right? Just like cleanliness, brahmacharya, and then truthfulness. So being truthful in your speaking, being truthful in your action, and then non-attachment to objects of this world, objects of sense gratification, right? So there is 5 yamas, 5 niyamas. So those are all improving your activities, working on your karma, and the preparation is you do that to link it, right? And then you have also asana. So in that sense, it's dealing more with physical world. So karma yoga is connecting your physical reality of your conditioned nature, of your physical proclivities, and transcendentalizing your karma, right? So whatever your karma is, your vritti. So then Jnana Yoga means just like you cannot say that Pratyahara is karma yoga, right? Because it's teaching more of don't engage your karma, but actually renounce all karma. So it's more like a Jnana, Vairagya mood. But then meditation, especially we understand like from Bhagavatam, so he would also be reading the Bhagavatam and also Vishnu Purana because they're Sri Vaishnava. But they're basically like very similar texts. So he will also literally be reading this kind of thing and meditating on that. So that becomes bhakti. Because the whole goal of all yoga ultimately is, what is the verse? There's 2 things we should do. The 2 most important principles of Krishna consciousness. Huh? Yes, always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Sarva vidhi nishedasya, so all of the do's and do nots, vidhi nished, they're all subservient to that principle. So the goal, just like Krishna tells Arjuna, that you should engage your Kshatriya nature and make it Krishna conscious. But what is the essence of that? He tells him that mam anusmara yudhyacha. Fight, but only fight in that mentality that you're always thinking of me and you're always conscious of what I've told you and what I've given you. So the instructions. So this is the essence of all types of yoga, is that your consciousness should always be fixed. But Bhakti Yoga, as we know, meditation. So Prabhupada is clearly mentioning that this is not correct because it's pointless to meditate on some dot or something. Doesn't make sense, right? Or sometimes they say don't meditate on anything, just silence the mind, which is also, according to Vedic conception of meditation, is also nonsense. And then Prabhupada mentions in 6th chapter, yeah? Then Prabhupada also explains even more on that point. So how do we apply this in our life and how do we also share that with others? So that's a very good point. I had so many points written down, I hardly touched on them. But that was one of the points I wanted to mention. Because this is a very kind of interesting part of the purport that he's explaining, that people imagine all concocted things like a target or a circle. So because in the Upanishads is given, there is one verse given, that the Brahman is the one who is shooting. What is that verse? You remember? Is it arrow and the target, all of them. It's a very famous verse, like Shankara everyone quotes. So the Gita gives the same one, like what is that verse? Brahma Havir, Brahmagno, Brahmano Hutam. So it's kind of the same thing, but in a different way. So in the Upanishads they link that with Om, that the Brahman, the Om, is all one. So the person shooting the arrow and the target. So they take that idea, I don't know where it comes from, maybe it's from there, and they think I just meditate on a literal target or on a circle, or sometimes they concoct some other thing, meditate on nothing. But it's clearly given that is half of the point of Dhyana Yoga is literally actually to silence the mind. Because it says Chitta Vritti Nirodha, so to stop the fluctuations of the mind, right? But then the second half, that's the negative, right? That's the do not. That's the negative side. But then you have to put positive side. And the Yoga Sutras then says, beginning level at least is Swarupa Avasthanam, highest level is meditating on Ishvara and surrendering to Ishvara, Ishvara Parinidhanat. But the basic one is that you stop the fluctuations of the mind, so there's no longer material subject matter, there's no longer matter. And when you're completely silent, then you observe the spiritual form. So, but these people, they just want to silence the mind on nothing or meditate on something material. But the problem with that is you're not going to go anywhere. The goal of yoga is to actually make a change, right? Either you get samadhi to develop Krishna prema. But if you're concocting something, then you won't go anywhere, right? Just like there's that song by George Harrison. If you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there. So they just concoct anything, but they're not going to get anywhere. So to solve the problems of suffering, we must listen. Mahat Sevam Dvara Maho Vimukte. That we must listen carefully to the Mahatmas, just like Kapila, Shukdev Goswami, and hear clearly and authorizedly how to practice meditation. Otherwise it becomes a speculation and it becomes a waste of our human form of life. So in order to actually get any benefit, we must listen. That's another point I've written down. That generally is describing seeing, but the seeing only comes by hearing. Therefore Bhagavatam explains that Shruta Ikshita Panta, it's the path of seeing by hearing. So even people criticize that, why you have icons, we are iconoclasts, we want to attack you. But actually we're only seeing by the ears. So actually we're only hearing. So seeing Krishna's form, the deity form, we want to see, but we have to hear in order to see. We have to hear from the pure devotee. So time is a little bit late, so I'll end here, unless there's any critical question, any urgent question. So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Radha Govinda Dev Transcendental Forms ki jai. Radha Govinda Dev ki jai. Shri Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki jai. Nityananda Prabhu ki jai. Thank you very much. Now we will hear and see by the